PJ, where the f are you? You're supposed to be doing an exotic car hacks review on the Countach. PJ, you don't even do drugs.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know why you didn't tell me earlier. The more you look at it, the more you start to realize its classiness, its elegance, and its tribute to the past.
The original Countach was a Tomahawk missile in a Gatling gun world.
Does it really do justice to the $3 million price tag on the road? You ready? Hey guys, welcome back to Exotic Car Hacks, and today we are talking about my 2022 Lamborghini Countach, the car that doesn't make sense as much as the LGBTQT community.
That is what the trans genocide in this country, in this city, has brought me to.
Doesn't make sense driving Teslas or transgenders driving Cybertrucks. Now, if you can't really relate what those two things have in common with the new Countach, neither can I, but there are many things that make no sense in the world, and this is definitely not one of them. I'm going to tell you actually why this car makes sense and doesn't make sense at the very same time. This is a $3 million car. Now, the majority of Countaches were priced between $2.5 to $3 million from the factory, and it is truly awkward to look at. And I'm going to tell you why it's quite awkward. It's quite angular, and it's not really new, and it's not really old, but it's very SVJ, and it's very Scion. So I don't know if you even say Scion or Sion, but people always criticize how I say McLaren because it's McLaren or fucking McLaren. I don't fucking know. But anyways, so whatever the fuck you call that other $3 million or $4 million hypercar Lamborghini has, and then the SVJ, which I'm very familiar with, it's an Aventador. And why is this fluffy thing constantly making me like, it's really, we talked about LGBTQ, now I'm fucking like wearing this thing like it's just this identity crisis microphone. But anyways, back to, sorry, I was getting distracted there for a second. So we're talking about the Countach today. And like I was saying, most of these cars are between $2.5 to $3 million. Now, I originally said when the Countach first came out in 2022, there's 112 cars made. This is a pretty impressive thing. When you want to showcase to people you have a much larger penis than them, you are one of 112, which is a big deal, right? Like you're like Ron Burgundy coming out of Anchorman, like,
ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
and that's what you get with the Countach, right? The name, you get the idea, and you get the fact that everybody knows you're rich. Well, the majority of people don't know you're rich because they don't even know what the fuck it is. The other people know you're rich because they know what it is, but they've never seen one, so they don't really know what it costs. So this car has all kinds of identity crises because either Lamborghini did a really bad job marketing it so that people that actually know what it is were only the people that could afford it, or they did a really good job at keeping a gem hidden. So today in the review, we're actually going to talk about what makes the Countach really freaking good or what makes it really freaking bad. And we're going to talk about something else, and it's the fact that I just looked online and I couldn't find a single person that has actually reviewed a Countach, that actually owned the Countach or even had the money to buy one. And I found that pretty interesting because the majority of people who do car reviews on the internet are 19-year-old jerk-offs who sit there and basically don't have any money to actually experience the cars anyways. And I'm going to tell you why that makes a difference, because any single car is always amazing in the first 15 minutes you drive it, and any 19-year-old who wants to make a name for himself on YouTube that actually cares what other people think, don't be that guy, typically will tell you that every single car they own is unbelievable, and every single car they get to review, because they're gracious enough to have been lent one to review, is just unbelievable. Can you imagine every car on the planet being unbelievable when clearly this doesn't look like $3 million, or does it? Well, I'm going to tell you some key factors about this particular Countach, and then we're going to talk about the design, then the engine, and some of the other things that I've been able to experience. I've held back this review for a week to be able to make sure I experience it for a little bit more. This car is actually midnight blue, and in this video it might come across black. Depending on how the light hits it, it's a very, very dark blue. Metallic, absolutely strikingly gorgeous. It has every carbon option that was available from the factory, from the interior to the exterior carbon piece here, the front lip, these mirrors, these side skirts, and even the internal door inserts, which are very, very rare, followed by the vents, and then the engine surround, and then it follows through here with the back of the car. Superbly loaded with a $2.8 million MSRP, and a lot of these standard stainless here turned gold for a very classy Countach look. Now, this is the outside. You'll see that the wheels are basically bronze, and the inside is quite beautiful in this camel-like interior. As a Middle Eastern guy, I recognize camels wherever I go. This is a camel interior and truly beautiful, with all of the jewelry on the car, instead of being black, is now gold. So striking in design, absolutely beautiful in terms of color combination, as you would expect from me, because every single car I buy has always been a very unique specification that just works for the brand of the car. Now, you'll see some Countach elements throughout the car. The first one is that the rear looks completely different from other types of SVJ or Scions, with the exhaust being centered like this. Still very, very well done with Countach lines here and insignias, which is different. You really get a width for the back because you get these kind of like open air intake openings, and you get it in a way where you see the width of the tire, something you really did on the original Countach. And then what Lamborghini calls the Countach line, you can really see it kind of appearing here on the side. Just works beautifully, like really, really does. And then on the front end, you have this very angular and bizarre design, which at first would take you back and you'd say, the SVJ is a better looking car, like it just is. But then the more you look at this, the more you experience this, the more you start to warm up to this idea and its beauty. And I'm going to tell you why it works very, very well from a design standpoint. So remember, we live in a world where right now, all jokes aside, you are able to buy a lot of older cars that are resto modded to new. And you can look at a manufacturer like Countach, you can look at a manufacturer like Singer, and they're building these Porsches that are basically shitbox 993s, 964s, and they're modifying them to be modern art pieces. And they're basically selling them for $2 to $3 million. The Countachs are like $1 million plus, the Singers are like $3 million, and it's a great driving experience. They're not even a real manufacturer, like it's not even like a real Porsche or anything. It's just like a completely built out car. Even Porsche itself is starting to retro mod their cars. So if you think about that, this actually is really, really smart, because now the factory basically said, hey, we're going to take everything that has made this era of Lamborghini amazing and ended Lamborghini, and we're going to take everything in design that made Lamborghini what it is, and we're going to make it newer, and we're going to throw it on this car. And in some cases it wouldn't work, but in this case, the more you look at it, the more you start to realize its classiness, its elegance, and its tribute to the past. And for that reason, I think the design is just spectacular. But it's a 7 when you first glance at it, and you often don't notice it. Like, I actually put this next to the SVJ at a Cars and Coffee event. Most people chose to come before because they saw the bright orange interior SVJ that I had, and only noticed after that this was next to it. So its presence is not as dramatic as the SVJ, but it is absolutely gorgeous. The longer you look at it, the more you realize its little details, from these side vents being huge like the SVJ, but these little slats here adding. And then take a look at this. Look at how beautiful. This is the gas cap. You have this gold trim right around the gas, and it's really classy and elegant, and it works really well in design. And while it's angular in essence, and it's not as roundish or as aggressively dramatic as an SVJ, I don't think it needs to be. I think it just holds its own very, very well. And that's one of the reasons why I opted for a darker color rather than like a bright orange or bright green or bright blue or something that was really like dramatic, because I don't think the lines on this car require drama. They require like classiness and elegance, and it just really works. And so if Countach and Singer can get $3 million for a 993, then my argument is that Lamborghini should easily be able to get $3 million for what started as back then a 150, 200K Countach that in today's value, even today on the used market, is 500-600K, and in today's value would be well into the $2 million. So you look at something like this, and at first it doesn't make sense, but the more you experience it, the more it makes sense. So let's talk about, is it really worth $3 million? So let me tell you a little bit about my view on the money of this, because this is Exotic Car Hacks after all, and I've decided to make this video a little bit longer to really go in depth about this, because a lot of people were confused about why I would pay so much money for a car that ultimately is not as recognizable as a Chiron or a Pagani. Well, I already have a Chiron and I'm buying a Pagani anyway, so it's not a question of if this or that. But what made this car worth a $3 million investment? So let's look at what this car represents, because this is the final real hyper Lamborghini that they pulled out prior to going to the Revuelto, which was the first Aventador of its new generation, right? The Revuelto. So let's talk about this idea of what Lamborghini was. Lamborghini started with the Countach, meaning Lamborghini became famous because of its Countach, right? That's the car you see in Wolf of Wall Street. That's the car you see everywhere. That's the car that basically really pushed Lamborghini into this edgy, exciting company. And something incredible happened. They've been able to single-handedly like surpass sales for Ferrari, become really popular with young people, and really embody the idea of a dramatic driving experience, right? But the Countach for its era was beautiful, but what a piece of shit in today's standard. So looking at the future, you have to understand that the Scion, which was the last hypercar that basically Lamborghini made to commemorate the future of Lamborghini, which was the electrification, the super pack, and all these things that they do hybrid-wise, that was a car that was basically like $3 to $4 million, and they were like, hey, take a look at this Scion. This thing basically is the future of what we're going to pull for the new Lamborghinis, right? And they kind of do that, right? They take some of the shape and they use the Revuelto, and that's the future. To me, this car was really special for two key reasons, and I think from an investment standpoint, will do very, very well in the future. One, it only has 100 units, and this is a big deal, and I'm going to tell you why. It has 100 units globally, 112 to be exact. But the reason that matters is because it bears a name, Countach. So I think that's important, because it's not just a hypercar, it's a rebirth of the original ultimate hypercar, right? So I think that's important. It would be the same as McLaren saying, we're going to come out with a successor to the F1, not the P1, but a new F1 for 2028, and that car would probably sell for 10 times what their W1 bullshit, wannabe car is selling for. So what I'm saying is if they did that, it would help. So the name matters, and I think that's one reason. But the second reason is because this car represents everything that made Lamborghini Lamborghini up to 2022, and that era where Lamborghini really became a household brand was because of this car, because of what the Countach did to the brand, and then how the Scion ended the brand for that era. And now the new version of all these electric bullshit cars that are coming out that might be very appealing to the LGBTQ plus community, but that is what these cars are. It's all Scion inside, and on the outside, it's all Countach. So it brings forward the best, the new, the old, and it bears the name, and even better than that, which I believe the Aventador was probably the greatest V12 car they ever had, because it actually worked, and yeah, it had its fair share of issues, and it had a clunky gearbox, but it works so well. And in this case, this particular car right here just does the same thing. It's basically an Aventador at heart, a Scion in its tech, and it's the best of the V12. It's the end of a design era, and more than anything else, it just brings all these elements really well together. So my prediction is in the next 10 plus years, this will eventually be a $5 million car, but not quite yet. It is now able to be bought at great value. If you actually look all over Bring a Trailer and you look at some of these listings that are selling, you'll notice these cars are selling in the mid-2s, which are right around sticker, and they've been around for 2 years and are almost out of warranty. So it's going to take a little bit of a dip right out of the warranty gate, but because of these cars having such low numbers and the fact that so few of them are out there and so few people are talking about them, showing them off, they're basically remaining a secret weapon that's really hidden in there, no different than the Scion. And the Scion's been doing the same thing, slightly under MSRP. Good specs are non-existent, ugly specs are going for slightly under. And it's just one of these things where the value and the storage of wealth is very, very safe. And that's why I decided to go ahead and add a Countach to my already extensive collection of hypercars. Now, originally, I was not that excited about the car. I never got a chance to sit in it, drive it, use it. Today, we're going to go for a drive together, really get a gauge for how nice the car is. And from a driving standpoint, it drives very different than an Aventador. It has a lot of similar kind of characteristics, but it's still different. So I saw Parker at Very Cool Versions just borrowed one of these to do a review. He did the launch control and he did the shifting. He wasn't a fan of the gearbox. He didn't think it was worth the $3 million. I think from an investment standpoint, it definitely is worth the $2.5 to $2 million you can pick up one for. But in the longevity, I think it's going to do really well. I don't think this is the car you buy if you only have one hypercar. I think you can buy a Chiron and you can buy a lot of other cars to be more noticed and more exciting and more dramatic. This is the kind of car you add to an already extensive collection. That's why it made sense for me specifically. I'm on like car 36 now, I think, off the top of my head, either 36 or 39, because I moved a couple of cars out. But that by itself will make a great addition to the long-term collection here at Exotic Car Hacks. So let's go for a drive together and let's get a good gauge for, do we love how the Countach drives, or do we agree with the other 3 people that borrowed a car in terms of how nice of a car is it or how bad of a car is it, and does it really do justice to the $3 million price tag on the road? You ready? Let's go. So on the inside, you'll notice the car is basically an Aventador dash with a bunch of 3D printed vents that are slightly different. And of course, they're not carbon. So you know me, I love the plastic. And then followed by a beautiful carbon console, half Aventador, half Scion, and with a Huracan interface, or somewhat of one. It's slightly different, and it's really not. The steering wheel is the same as an Aventador, except you don't have a ton of buttons for audio, and the screen doesn't change like an Aventador does. So some good things, some not so good things. And then in this display that actually works significantly better to the touch than the STO, Storado, and Technica screens. However, it's still annoying because you have to hit 2 buttons to move the actual volume up and down, or hit this button and then hit this to mute the volume. I still to this day will say, please Lamborghini, I know you didn't do it on a Revuelto, you did it, please put a fucking knob in these cars that you can just press to shut the fucking music. But anyways, so that's that. And the only other cool thing inside, which really there's no storage outside of a glove box, which is fine. You'll notice a lot of stitching, a lot of cool stuff. The carbon doors are a lot better than before. But is this strip in the middle here? So here you have a strip that looks like it's just really, you know, gloomy outside. But you press this button right here and boom, take a look. Now you can see through. So you see now you have glass and boom, it's fogged. Glass, fog. Now I can see the birds, can't see the birds. Can see, can't see. Anyways, so you can do that, play with a button, entertain yourself for about 10 seconds. The only cool thing here is you have this 48 volt fucking super cap thing. I don't know why anyone needs to know what's going on here. It doesn't do anything. You can't do anything with it, so I don't know why you would need to see it. You can click vehicle and have a cute little, cool little graphic here playing for your entertainment in case you're very bored in the middle of the day, or you want to prove to people why it was worth paying $3 million for a car. I would argue you can probably connect your phone and do that too. But anyways, so then you have your media and then everything else continues. And you can listen to old school music since this is an old school song. And again, to go to the volume up. So now we're gonna go for a drive and actually see if it really lives up to its name of being the Countach. All right, ready? Let's go. So, you know, at low RPMs, like kind of a slow driving car, you get a lot of the vibes of a Aventador, and I think that's gonna be like clear in the car. You're still not getting that smooth dual clutch because it is still a single clutch. But what happens though that I've noticed about this car, either is because of the power or the noise or anything else, it drives very much like an Ultimate. It's pretty smooth. There's no real like jerkiness to it. It's not any different unless you're going really, really slow in first gear or anything, but generally very, very planted, very exciting, sounds good. Not as loud as we'd like it to be, but sounds good. The Aventador sounds louder from the factory. I don't know why, this has more power, but this still sounds pretty good. It doesn't sound good standing still or getting turned on. So if you turn it on, you're not really getting a very exciting roar or anything you can sit there and romp on. But I give it a very similar feel than the Ultimate, which came out the same year. Also a docile SVJ nature, and I think the main thing is the SVJ is a very dramatic car. This is not a very dramatic car. It's a very classy car with a lot of power, and I think this works well. So I think the exhaust note is appropriate for this. Yintani might do an exhaust for this, so we'll see. We'll take a look at if that's worth doing or not. But for now, I think generally speaking, you're getting, again, a lot of power. And you're still getting smooth enough shifts. And it's got, I would say, very, very like exciting power. Now, I was racing earlier today, like we're just driving a little bit faster, trying to red line the car in every gear, and you do get a sluggish kind of like shift if you don't really hit it right at the right spot. So it really comes down to knowing your transmission in this case and knowing how to drive the car. You get used to it. I've realized in the past when I drove my SVJ that I hated the way it drove after I drove something else, but if I drove just that for a week and I got used to how to shift, how to drive, I was like, yeah, I really liked it and it was fun. And like I said, this is the end of an era, the end of a V12 single clutch era for Lamborghini. So, you know, definitely a lot to take from this. But again, the ride is slightly bumpy, no different than an Aventador. You feel almost every bump on the road, and you feel the bounciness of the car being so low to the ground. So, you know, nothing's really changed. It drives just like an Ultimate. It doesn't drive as much as like an SVJ than an Ultimate. A little bit faster because you get power a little bit earlier, but I still don't think it's dramatic enough to say it drives significantly better than an SVJ or Ultimate. It drives the same as an Ultimate with a nice kick to it. But that's about it. So I don't know that the drive itself is worth the money. I don't think that the drive itself is worth a $3 million price tag, because you can get the same drive, I would argue, if not better, with even an SVJ. I would say the drive's probably a little bit more aggressive and more planted with an SVJ. Actually, when you go really fast with an SVJ, you get that vibe that you're still in a race car. And even though it's really large, it handles and functions just like a smaller, more compact car like the STO. So even though it's really large, and usually people don't associate Aventadors with track cars, the SVJ does a really good job, and it's very docile and exciting, and it really works really well around the track or on the street. This car, on the other hand, though, is more like an Ultimate, which is a very fast cruiser, so it doesn't have the same kind of confidence around turns that the SVJ does at really high speeds, but it's still nonetheless pretty impressive. Now, I've always said that was because of the ALA system on the SVJ. Other people have argued it's just the way the car is set up, but I'm not a tech guy, so I don't really freaking care or know anything about, you know, what makes a car act a certain way. But I can tell you this one drives very effectively, just not as dramatic as an SVJ. But that's basically it for the Countach. There isn't much else to say in terms of the actual driving composition of the car itself. It sounds good inside. You hear the cracks, the pops. That's what makes it slightly different than a Revuelto. With the Revuelto, you don't get that. You don't get that crack and pop, which is something that a lot of people like with the car. It gives it a character thing that I think is reminiscent of a V12. But really, I mean, I think the Revuelto is still a much more agile and exciting car to drive if it works, as having a dual clutch in it and having a better, I would say, interface. But I think the interface is almost identical to this, so I don't think that it's better or worse. And otherwise, if the question is Revuelto or this, then I would tell you that the argument is that the Revuelto is definitely going to be mass-produced compared to this, and it's not going to be as special as this, but it marks the new beginning, which I'm excited to see what the SVJ variant or SB variant looks like once it actually comes out.